The Chidah brings in his Rosh David a beautiful explanation from Parashat Derachim on this week's parasha. So there's a difficult Gemara in Erevin. Rav Bar Mari darshans the pasuk, Yoshev olam lifnei Elohim chesed ve'emet man yinitzruhu. Ematay Yoshev olam lifnei Elohim bizman shechesed ve'emet man yinitzruhu. When can the world be established before Hashem, Elokim, i.e. the attribute of judgment? The answer given is when loving kindness and truth preserve it. The question surrounds a statement brought by Rashi in Bereshit about the word shakaf, hashkafot, looking down. While most instances of hashkafot in the Torah indicate the coming of evil, there is one exception regarding tzedakah where it indicates blessing. The pasuk, Hakshifa mim'on kodshecha min hashemayim uvarech et amcha. This teaches that through the power of tzedakah, charity, particularly gifts to the poor, judgment, din, is transformed into mercy, rachamim. This helps us understand the Gemara. Rav Bar Mari's problem is, how can the world be established before Elokim, judgment? Don't we learn from the Midrash that Hashem wanted to create the world through midat hadin, the attribute of judgment, but saw that it wouldn't be able to stand? So he combines rachamim, mercy, with midat hadin? Thus, the answer is when chesed and emet preserve it. RabbiYehoshuaSimons in Parashat Derachim explains that tzedakah transforms the attribute of din into rachamim. So din does not have to be combined with rachamim anymore and can fulfill Hashem's original thought, that it should stand with din alone. In this case, when Yisrael engages in tzedakah, din itself becomes rachamim. The Chidah points out that this helps us understand the statement from the Midrash, because it sounded like it was saying that Hashem changes mind and thoughts, chas v'shalom. But this is not the case, as we can see. Now, chesed and emet are tzedakah. The word tzedek, righteousness, shows how din and rachamim can be the same thing. By performing an act of chesed, giving one's money to the poor and needy, one performs an act of truth and righteousness. It's only right that not all of the money Hashem gave me is for me, especially when there are poor people around who do not have enough. A story is brought by Harav Ovadia Yosef about Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Rimanov. A poor man once came to ask for tzedakah, and the Rav felt an immediate sense of pity and sympathy for this poor man due to the state of his appearance, and immediately gave him a gold dinar. After the poor man left, he worried that he only gave the man out of the sense of pity, so he called him back and gave him another dinar. The poor man asked him why he did that, and he explained that the pasuk says, Naton titen lo, you shall surely give to the poor. But why does the pasuk say, give, naton, twice? Because at the end of the pasuk, which says, V'lo yira livavcha betitecha lo. If you give initially because you're just feeling bad and pity, you should give again because it's a mitzvah, the correct thing to do. As Rashi states on the pasuk in Teruma, V'chuli teruma, charity must be given for me, for Hashem's sake. So, we can now see why midat hadin can be transformed into rachamim, because tzedakah is righteousness itself. What about looking at it the other way? What is compassionate about din? Why, as Rabbeinu Ovadia Yosef brings in Eitz Anafavot, does the Torah say, one who does tzedakah and justice fills the world with kindness? As it states, Ohev tzedakah u'mishpat chesed, Hashem malah ha'aretz. Love, charity, and justice, and Hashem's kindness will fill the world. This week, we read Parashat Parah because this is the last Shabbat before Nisan. The lesson that we learn from the Parah Duma, the red heifer, will help us resolve this question. My dear friend, Rabbi Bitachon, explains it like this. He first describes a person who goes to wash his hands, but remains standing there for a while. So we ask the man, why isn't he washing? And he says, because only my left hand is dirty, and my right hand doesn't see why he should get involved in washing the left hand, because he's going to get dirty too. And it's not his problem. So I'm waiting them to finish arguing about it. In the avoda of the Parah Duma, which is described as a mitzvah that does not make any sense, the epitome of that in fact, one person who has got tumat met goes to a Kohen, and the Kohen sprinkles the ashes of the Parah Duma on him, purifying him, but he himself ends up tameh. Why should the Kohen do this? It's not his problem that the other guy came into contact with a corpse, and why should he get tameh for him? It doesn't make any sense. This is the puzzle of the Parah Duma. Why would someone do that? It's not even logical. Even though the person with the tumat met has a serious issue that affects his whole life, and the tumat of the Kohen it receives is much easier to deal with, it still doesn't make sense to be so compassionate and selfless. This is not the law of nature. This is why Parah Duma is a chok. It's the law of Hashem, and Hashem's dinim are compassionate. And so is Yisrael, the ones that are commanded and bound up with Hashem. The selfless compassion we have for each other, The inability to look away or allow our brethren to suffer comes from the very highest point of our soul, Keter, which is where we're connected to Hashem himself, and it represents our supreme value of the infinite sacredness and preciousness of our fellow Jew, and is associated with Hashem's great name, Havaya. When we perform this act of tzedakah, which is just, we are actually being compassionate and uniting Hashem's name of Havaya with Elokim, so that, as we said, they shouldn't be combined, but demonstrated to be one and the same. This helps us understand how the original Dvar Torah of the Chidah and Parashat Para are connected to this week's parasha. Because it is through this selfless demonstration of righteous love and compassion between each other, through the mitzvah of the Para Aduma, that we atone for the Chet HaEgel, as Rashi brings the Midrash that says that the Para Aduma, the cow, is the mother cleaning the calf, the Egel. This avodah is enabled through the Mishkan, Hashem's dwelling, built through our selfless acts of Chesed and Emet, Teruma and Nediv Liba, as well as the Teshuvah, which brings back Hashem's Shechina out of her state of poverty and exile to dwell among us because, let's face it, where else would Hashem want to dwell if not among the people who were his very first thought and who were enabled to establish the world according to Hashem's original thought? So the lesson here is sincerely how powerful tzedakah is, far, far more than we can imagine. This shouldn't get lost among all the other many statements of how powerful all the mitzvahs are, but should receive its own emphasis. One story told is the story testified by Rabbi Shlomo Shlomiel about the Arizal, that when he was learning and he stopped and he said a blessing upon hearing bad news, everybody asked him what's going on. He said that he heard that there was a Torah scholar, Rabbi Yaakov Alteretz, who was crying over his poverty, and Hashem was going to send a swarm of locusts to devour Sfat as punishment for the people not supporting him. When they went to give him tzedakah, the locusts came, but the wind blew them into the sea. Another story, brought in Avot de Rabbi Natan, also describes an incident where a chassid who would give generous tzedakah was at sea, and his boat sunk in a storm. Rabbi Akiva saw this and was about to testify in court that his wife can remarry when the man walked in. He asked what happened, and he said that when he was drowning, he heard the waves themselves saying, "Let us carry this man to shore, because he has given tzedakah all his life." Indeed, as Rabbi Akiva points out after that, tzedakah tatzil mimavet, tzedakah rescues us from death. And not just the individual, but the whole world. Olam chesed yibaneh. The world is built through kindness. It is through this incredible act of selfless giving, a true chok, but also righteous and just, that the world is fitting in Hashem's eyes. And indeed, we must all be inspired to do our absolute best to give tzedakah. It will mamash improve the world tangibly, and be'ezrat Hashem, greatly hasten the coming of the Mashiach and world peace. Shabbat Shalom. Now, as a quick bonus, a little chiddush of mine. Another understanding of the original thought was to build the world out of Midat Hadin, and it was then not going to work, so he combines it with Rachamim. Now, Chesed is doing something nice for someone else, even though they didn't have to. It's not coming out of necessity, it's coming out of kindness. Gevura is doing something out of necessity. It's only right that this person receives this benefit. Rachamim combines the two, and one softens and sweetens the necessary, even though it doesn't need sweetening. I say that we can look at it like this. With the Gevura and Rachamim applying to Hashem's motivation in creating, that Hashem ideally wanted to do it out of pure necessity, i.e., he needs to, but decided to also sweeten the necessity with a bit of I didn't have to make it work. So a lot of people need to hear that he didn't have to feel comfortable, but as we like to say a lot on this channel, he needs us, and as scary as that is, why should he have to sweeten that by saying he didn't really have to? Don't we want to connect to him now properly, to his original thought? Isn't that why he created the whole world? For Yisrael, because he needs us? As that is my own chiddush, of course, let's just take that with a pinch of salt. But that doesn't mean he doesn't need us. Shabbat Shalom.